So I've just watched a short anime film, Mary and the Witch's Flower by Studio Ponok, and I've essentially just watched a watered down Studio Ghibli film. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's pretty average for what it is, and the well portrayed characters did very much help in keeping me interested in a rather poorly driven plot. The film itself is 1 hour 42 minutes, but doesn't feel like it really goes anywhere too astonishing. We're presented with an abundance of eye-catching displays, and such as a herd of deers on an island. Rarely are we able to experience these sights, and when we do, it's either lackluster or brought suddenly to a halt. Contrasting this, however, the movie's character do to an extent keep you invested. For example, I liked Peter's character, how he was able to quickly resolve the stereotypical conflict between him and Mary, which in itself hit like a pillow fight. I was really invested in what he was saying about his mother, and I was wondering how they would deal with his plot arc. Unfortunately, a lot of the possible development was cut prematurely due to the film's rather schizophrenic nature. My biggest complaint I had with the movie, and my overall justification in saying that it is a watered down Studio Ghibli film, is of course the art. The art style is literally identical to the Studio Ghibli style. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration. It's something that everyone does and is inherently impossible not to do. The reason, however, why a lot of art doesn't look like a replica of each other is that the creator or creators will demonstrate an amalgamation of what they're inspired by, and which is based upon what they see personally as the work's merits. Take Undertale for example, which is obviously influenced by a wide spectrum of different works of art, but Toby Fox amalgamated them together and therefore successfully created its own identity, which differs far from its various predecessors. For another brief example, I'd say Devilman Crybaby, as many of the tracks I personally got a peaceful Studio Ghibli vibe from. The show's ending certainly struck an End of Evangelion presentation, especially given that both of the last scenes show two characters whom have had a very rough relationship, to say the least, and who are at the end of the world being surrounded by a sea of murder. But because Devilman has its own identity, thanks to the hard-hitting retro tracks, a harsh contrast to the typical Ghibli soundtrack. Keep in mind, I definitely haven't watched all Ghibli films, so take this how you will, and it certainly differs from Neon Genesis Evangelion for obvious reasons. So at least two instances strike me as creatively taking inspiration, which I love and admire, rather than the rather soulless way approached by Mary and the Witch's Flower. I know that this was in fact worked on by people from Studio Ghibli, but that doesn't excuse it from being so unoriginal, unless they could have easily given it a unique style while paying homage to their work within Studio Ghibli. Instead, we're given an eye-gutting imitation, which offers nothing new to the table and making criticizing it as something independent from Studio Ghibli very hard. It's by a different studio, but doesn't feel like this is the case, and I could easily understand someone for assuming that this was a new Studio Ghibli film. Perhaps from a business perspective this is understandable. Their new studio needs to do well for their first film, so they could be using their financial success of Studio Ghibli to influence the movie's overall aesthetic, and by outcome of this, its financial gains. And so by that train of thought, then the movie is essentially just a cash grab, and I don't think that the film itself really excels in any other lane. Perhaps the success of this movie will help in pushing them to be more creative, as they should potentially have a more flexible budget to do so, which I hope does happen, but only time can tell how Studio Ponok progresses after this. Removing it from Ghibli, I would call it strongly mediocre to lightly average, which is a shame as the characters infested me in the movie. The world began to interest me, but the plot was the whirlwind of an identity crisis, which crashed all of its merits into rubble. The pacing is equivalent to someone talking really fast about one topic, and then all of a sudden disorientating you by jumping into another. For example, it teases it's going to be about Mary going to this magical college, and then it shoves it into your face that the teachers are evil. The payoff of the story feels weak, like it's desperately trying to save itself with a victorious Studio Ghibli track playing in the background, which only helps to put a half-exposed flimsy blanket on the film's downfalls and getting blown off by a brief spurt of wind. I would say, however, it did get better as it went along, as I found in the beginning almost a gargle of tropes, but when Mary got on the broom for the first time, then it did start to pick up the pace, but not enough to save it from its weak ending. In conclusion, I wouldn't really recommend this one. Instead, watch Kiki's Delivery Service and Little Witch Academia by Studio Trigger. I can see Studio Ponok's merits of how they portrayed characters, and the world was quite aesthetically pleasing, so who knows, maybe their next film they'll get a better script and learn from the mistakes made here. I genuinely hope that they do because of the potential merits, but this film I'm afraid was a step in the wrong direction for me.